Our job is to market that product to the consumer who are agents. The 7-level comp plan is how we get compensated, because we don't get a salary to do it. We get compensated. How we get compensated on marketing the product page. We are professional network marketers. So what does networking entail? What you talked about. What else is marketing? Media. So if you do those two things aggressively, then you will be disproportionately rewarded because of the comp plan. I was like, that's right. That's why everybody should be doing media, because we get basically paid. We are EXP's marketing force, marketing partner, and they just share half of the revenue with us.
Casey was the blonde?
The one whose husband died that they gave the award to. She is a professional network marketer. She's been in a network marketing company called New Skin for like 25 years. So she's built a large organization there. Plus she has 2,000 agents in. That's why when I hear her speak, like, she knows the end, like she knows what the business is, inside and out.
She gets it and has executed.
Well, she's very clear. Because in that meeting they were talking about like how, we should make it to where like there's not silos and everybody's helping. And she was like, well, I'd like to offer a different point of view. Like, you want leaders to lead. And it's okay to have like healthy rivals and competition. And if you get beat by somebody that's better than you, like, okay, that's what it is. And you want leaders to lead. She also said that you should keep it like uniform till a certain point, and then like let people do whatever they want to do.
He said when an agent has 500 people under that, they could start their own brand, like their own website.
But before that, they should be under like the brand, like illegal. You know what I mean? It's like, and the way a guy described it, which I thought was insightful, was like, Gary Keller used to tell people this is where entrepreneurs thrive, and he was like, no, this is where entrepreneurs thrive, because it's like we're all the platform is the platform. But it gives us an opportunity. It's like you're in an app store, and you can have your own app in iTunes. You know what I'm saying? And not everybody's going to be everybody's flavor. That's okay. So it's just very insightful.
Personality, approach. There's so many factors why somebody will want to join you or not.
Right. Like we were talking with Carla, had like this awareness. She's like, oh, like I can do more of what like I'm doing. Well, and I think Carla in the past, she was like, oh, like I do the operations side. And Aaron does like the attraction side. She was like, oh, I can do the attraction. I'm like, yeah. You could have YouTube videos where it says, you want to have a confidential conversation.
I don't have my own calendar.
But here's the thing. So what Jose was telling me at his event he was at, there's a guy there that talked about, he's basically talking about duplication, leadership. What he said is there's 12 different skills of leadership. One is like coaching people one-to-one.
Right.
One is like events. One is like running a third-party call. One is like time management. You know what I mean? So there's like 12 different skills, and I told him that would be a perfect thing to talk about at the leadership retreat in the DR. So what's interesting is right now, like, and as he was reading them, it's like email management, like all these different things. And I was listening to him, I'm like, yeah, I have, a lot of those things, but he was saying like, you can also seek out training on each one of those individual skills. So like for you, a skill that's you became aware of today that you could cultivate is running a third party.
But also having a link and putting it on all my social media and blasting it out.
And your own separate calendar that's not mine.
Right, and having a YouTube video about the model and about why.
How it changed their life.
How it changed my life specifically.
Yeah, and understanding the other different models when they ask you questions. Like all the stuff that I'm doing, like you should do this.
But I could talk about my experience as a mom and how I want more time with my kids.
So you can bring that. What I'm saying is like also understanding the difference between the different models. So when they ask you questions on third-party calls, you know what you're talking about.
Right, I need to really know my stuff.
So you've stepped into, let's say, like the skill of events because you've done them. You stepped into media, which I think is part of one of those 12 skills. Then you've also, now it's like stepping into running third-party.
I think the email marketing too, using like the AI prompts, you can create a whole campaign.
Yeah.
So people, they maybe go on your link and they...
Yeah, then they're in the ecosystem, but then they get an email.
You tag them, and then they're getting emails.
Yeah, drip campaign.
Both of you are attracting different people.
Yeah, what I told her today, I'm like, you will attract someone who will not actually be attracted to me. Like, A completely different person. And that's okay.
And now that's your superpower as a female.
Well, what really got me is like, I want to help my sister. I feel like she really needs it. And I feel like this gave me kind of like a plan and a path.
And tools and like a mental map.
Yeah, that I could teach her to do too.
It's not her. It's how many other females.
It's not just her. I have a
That's
list in
what I
my
mean.
head of
It's
other
not just her.
people
It's-
in our
Well, and I think she also became aware because she's seen what it's done for us, and like she knows that what we're doing is like wild. She has this awareness that like she can do that for other people, and that's what like gets you.
That's what gets me excited because like we're good. Like, we're financially well off. And so me making more money for myself is not that exciting. It doesn't get me up. But if you tell me that I can help my sister change her life or other ladies like single moms in the organization, like that gets me excited.
Countless other
That
women.
gets me excited. Like if I could change their
Like legit.
legit. And I feel like it's the first time I saw a plan that I can teach them.
It's good. They have to like, somebody has to tell them to turn it off.
Well,
How many conversations have you had with me about that? Like they have to tell you to be like, yo.
Well, you hear balance. You hear everybody talk about balance. Let that be balance. You gotta balance.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the goal and everything get out of the way to get to the goal.
Sense of urgency. There's not an off switch, and it's a recognition that it's a season.
Right. Because you don't want to.
So one of the things that I was aware of too, like let's say you build to like 2,000. The probability, naturally and normally, and particularly depending on where you are in your life cycle, that you're going to aggressively charge is probably small. It's normal and natural.
Sure.
Because at that level, what I'm also aware of is like I was talking to Micah, she hit the 2,000, where he's growing at 100 agents a month, independent of him. Like, what it starts to aggressively build. So as a natural byproduct, you probably want to enjoy some of the fruits of it and go hiking for 3 weeks, which he's doing in June, or travel like every, you know what I mean?
Otherwise, what's the purpose?
It's normal, right? It's natural. So it's a recognition, it's a season. I told Carla when we first started doing this, it's the same thing as like with the real estate thing. And that didn't work out the same because it wasn't as leveraged, didn't compound, but it did in the fact that it took me 3 to 5 years to acquire the specialized knowledge to be able to make 7 figures selling real estate. Well, with this, you can spend 3 to 5 years of building and cultivating leaders in that, like radically take your foot off the pedal, and it will continue to grow independent of you. It's 3 to 5 years for you to have time freedom and location freedom. 3 to 5 years of flying around the country, driving to people, doing events. 3 to 5 years of volume over time. You know what I mean? Like ridiculous amounts of volume over that time frame for the long-term payoff in a vehicle that compounds and is highly leveraged. And people won't understand it. They won't really get what you're doing. But like bees don't take the time to explain to to explain to flies why honey's better than shit. So like they don't understand what we're doing because most people are playing a short game. What we're doing is playing a long game. The issue with long games, it takes a while to get like it's fun and juicy and traction. Sure. And I think that bamboo example is gorgeous. Yeah. It's perfect.
And I think part of it is skilling up.
Yeah.
I had the thought today of, all right, I've been here once before. It was in my real estate business. And now it's just skilling up in this industry. Yeah. And knowing a presentation and how to ask questions of people to qualify them enough to where then it just becomes, okay, I'm doing this again, I'm doing this again, I'm doing this again, I'm doing this again.
Explaining to Jose like that as a professional in this game, it requires similar skill sets, some that are different. And it's the acquisition of those skill sets. Where he was saying he was in a room with a leader that built 1-800-JUNK into the company that it is. And it said in the duplication of leaders typically have like 12 different skills that he mentioned. One of them was being able to do events.
But it goes to Mark said.
One is learning how to coach one-to-one. One is learn how to build people one-to-many. One was like time management. One is like conflict resolution. being able to resolve conflict.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Ready experience.
Oh yeah.
What is
So it was interesting because I was talking to Ricky, and his natural disposition is to move away from conflict. He doesn't like it. So there was someone he was talking to who said that they had conflict with Jose because Jose tried to go after a listing that he had. But he really likes me and he likes my content and he watches it all the time and he's like all about it. So he's like, I don't know, like, what do you think I should do? And I was like, it's interesting our different dispositions because I've learned that skill set of conflict resolution not only through selling real estate in high volume, but I also trained with Rick and with Gremlin for 10 years. So I know how to constructively work through conflict and do it well. And so his is what do you think I should do? And my answer to him was, get him on the phone right now. Let me talk to him. Right? So other people who don't have that skill set are like, let's see how it goes, like da-da-da. I'm like, no, let's get him on the phone right now. I want to talk to him about it right now.
Squash it.
It won't
Squash it.
It won't go away. Yeah. But what I thought was really insightful, and I told Jose at the Elite Builders Leadership Retreat in the DR, he can talk about this. So really in building leaders, it's a recognition. I told him what would be really awesome is, let's say we have a board of like leaders in the organization with a report card on those skill sets. So like Mark's like a 10 on this, he's like a 5 on this. He's like an 8 on this, he's like a 7 on this. So that way we know,
fall on people,
and we know what areas they need to work on and what areas they can help others with. Because if you're a 10 at something and Dan's a 7, I'd be like, yo, you need to talk to Mark about that, on how to do that. And that's super helpful. And I think with radical transparency and with no ego, so with that exercise we did today about like, what are my strengths and weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
That requires like you not getting upset about what somebody says accurately about what could be a weakness for you.
And being vulnerable.
Well, yeah, the person who's giving you that guidance is giving it to you from a place of love. Like, I'm not trying to be an asshole.
Sure intent.
Yeah, and what I think is also true is that with those type of report cards, you know who to match with who would be like really good team to work on something together. Does that make sense? So in a very interesting way, it just happened to be that way. But when we were doing strengths and weaknesses, what Carla's weaknesses are, I happen to be very strong in. And what my weaknesses are, she's exceptionally strong in. So together, we're actually a really good team. And what's happening now is that with what you were saying, you're starting to acquire some of those other skill sets, or you're open to it. And you're aware that through the acquisition of those other skill sets, you can actually lead other people and change their lives.
And I don't have to be as good as you are.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter.
Yes.
It's a matter of doing it.
Just doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
And like Casey said, the only way that I'm going to get better
It's by doing
it and playing back.
Yeah, because she asked her, she's like, well, as an introvert, how'd you get better at speaking? She's like, I had to speak all the time.
Yeah.
And the thing that gets in our way also is, and I know I've experienced this, is my thought always goes to, well, I'm not as good as. So then I shut down.
When they were asking about production numbers, it's like, who here has sold X amount of homes and you were one of the top 10% standing. So I looked at you, I'm like, do you see? You see what I'm talking about? Like, that's who you are. Yeah.
What he was talking about, you have, like, for doing these events, there's got to be a skill that you're giving to these agents to go to these events to do it. So, skilling up.
I said to you, where like you have the intestinal fortitude and courage, where you started doing the events, right?
Yeah.
And he asked me, he's like, you want to give me some honest feedback? I was like, yeah, bro, here's what worked really well. Yeah. Right? And I was like, yeah, and what I'm also aware of is from a speaking perspective, you can get better at telling stories and with interacting with the crowd. He's like, all right, what do you mean? I'm like, you're just like talking to them. And I was like, well, start with a heart story of you sleeping on your parents' couch when you're 30. And then also asking engaging questions. Like, you've seen me speak where I'm like, how many people besides me have ever had that experience? Right? And when I'm walking by people, I actually look right at them while I'm talking to them. Or like, hey, I'm noticing some heads nodding. Or what do you think this means? Where when I did the thing where I was like, who does Michael Jordan's mom represent? And then be quiet. Instead of telling them, because it gets interaction. But you were like, oh yeah, that's accurate. And I can work on that.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's iteration.
What's up, team? We are here with the talented, very successful Mr. Lars.
Good looking.
Yeah, oh, that's true. Yeah. Good looking.
Humble.
Yeah, humble at the same time. Head and Borg. You know, it's not a regular occurrence that I sit down with someone that like actually punched me in the stomach. You didn't physically punch me in the stomach, but you did it with a question, or really a statement. On a coaching call, you wanted me to bring you a personal win and professional win. And I had a very hard time bringing you personal wins. Professional wins were fine. And I shared with you a professional win that I'd gone to my son's soccer game. And I shared with you that he was surprised, like, and you were like, that's terrible. In all seriousness. And it really knocked the wind out of me and caused me to really stop and pause and think, you know, what I was doing and how I was spending my time. I also know that you can't give somebody something that you don't already possess. And I know part of your story is having gone down a similar track, and whether it was someone like you who said that to you, or you kind of noticed yourself, that caused you to start to make some changes. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was probably more or less just not having, you know, the comfort of a family sort of environment as a kid, and just knowing that I didn't want that for my family. And then you get into real estate, you're like, oh shit! It's like instantly it blows up in every part of your life.
Yeah, and when you were at the gala and you gave the talk, you showed pictures of you with like I think it was your son, and there's like in your as you're like on a laptop, like writing a deal.
I'm on my BlackBerry.
Yeah. So you did that, and you notice kind of, because I'm aware, like, you know, in our families, like, we're like, you know, we're leaders, right? And I think people are more influential than they realize. And we were talking last night about this kind of mental map of different levels of leadership, which really coincide with different levels of consciousness. So you had this awareness, like, hey, I want to have this like tight family unit. It's really important to me. At the same time, the world and real estate as a business was pulling you down this path of working 60, 70 hours a week, because that's what traditional success is. And, you know, that first level is like, of consciousness is to me. So was there a time where in your business you were thinking that way, like, oh man, all of this stuff is happening to me?
No, I think you and I are similar. I think we skipped the to me stage.
Okay.
To a certain extent. I mean, we were talking, you know, we do have the ability, for whatever reason, we're like massively driven, you know. So I got out of corporate America and got into, you know, this industry, and, you know, instantly found the traditional success. And that just leaves you with not a lot of bandwidth, not a lot of sort of margin in your life to show up as the dad or the husband that you really want to show up as.
Got it. So,
you know, so we were able to, and we're both like this, we're able to, you know, we have enough sort of personal accountability, and just driven, and, you know, we can hardly help ourselves to a certain extent. You know, the homes are there just to, those commission checks are ours to take.
Just to get,
And there's, you know, the industry's jacked up in a lot of ways, because most agents are, you know, they're just victims, you know, and the interest rates and the market and low inventory. You know, and that's just not, it doesn't have to be the story.
Yeah, and we both coach agents and have had coaching companies for like a decade, and that is something that I see is very, very prevalent, which is that particular level of leadership or consciousness, which is to me. So this is happening to me, you know, my sellers need to be nicer so I can enjoy myself more, or enjoy the business more, or the market needs to get better, or interest rates need to come down. And that level is where my success or failure or my personal happiness is dependent on external situations, props and players. And you were referring to the by me, which is where it's like, well, if it's to be, it's up to me. And you even said that word, which is responsibility, right? Where it's like, all right, what skills do I need to learn? There's always an opportunity in the marketplace. I just need to go and find it. I'm one relationship away from changing my family tree for the rest of our life. Now, did you always have that? Like that by me? Or was there like a moment?
The dynamic in my family was, for a lot of different reasons. I wasn't, there was a lot of chaos, and I didn't want to bring that chaos. Divorce, alcoholism, and just a bunch of stuff. And I think I just took the role of just doing the right thing in my family. So I studied real hard, and you know, my outlet to all of that was the path of achievement.
Got it.
You know, and just working hard, and almost like you can't control it. You know, it's just like, I'm gonna study for this test until I know I'm gonna get an A. I'm gonna, you know, work hard, where I sold 44 homes in my first full year in real estate.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you say that, I know what you mean. I think my wife, who's in the room, she would agree with you. She's like, can't even help himself. Like, it's like,
She's nodding.
Yeah. Well, and I told her one time, I'm like, hey, if something was to happen to me, would you marry somebody that like was like totally not ambitious at all? Like, are you like, I don't know, somebody, you know, and so, but I know underneath it, at least for me anyway, I'm curious for you, what I've come to like be aware of is that achievement thing is more like, well, if I achieve more, then I'll be loved. Or if I achieve more, and it's a fear that if I don't, and if I'm not like a rock star at everything, then people won't love me, is really what that is.
Yeah, I mean, probably don't have enough time to unpack all of our baggage on, on this episode, but I feel blessed, I mean, in that way, to have, at least that was my addiction, you know, so to speak, versus like, you know, doing way more sort of harmful things or things that are not like socially acceptable.
Yeah, it's a healthy addiction.
Achieving and making lots of money is like, it's acceptable.
Yeah, it's like, good job.
Right. But it has this massive like collateral damage that I just wasn't willing to accept, you know, all of that.
And being that you weren't willing to accept it, I know the suffix "-ide", right? What it means is to kill. Homicide, suicide, pesticide, genocide. So you made a decision, this is not acceptable to me. Now, at that time though, was there anyone that you could turn to that could be like, hey, this is how you like build out, this is how you create margin in your life in the real estate business? Was there anybody that you could learn from, or was it more like you pulling from corporate America and having that background and like an MBA where you're like, oh, this is how business is like supposed to run?
I mean, honestly, I think it was my first coach. You know, I went to a conference like my second month in real estate, and the first book that coach had me read was E-Myth.
Okay.
Revisited.
Yeah.
So I think that set this trajectory that, you know, I was going to build a business, a real business that gave me freedom. Even though they're really, I mean, even at the time, teams and that whole sort of leverage model, the team leaders had no freedom whatsoever. They were still selling like, there are still teams that are doing like 1,200 transactions with a team leader selling 200 homes.
There's still agents doing that now.
Yeah, and they're marginally profitable at that.
Yeah, marginally.
You know, so I was going to figure out a way to do it as a business where I didn't have to show up every day and just deal with the nonsense of all the drama from all of the clients all the time. It was just too much.
Yeah, and so for those who are listening, check out the E-Myth. It's an awesome book. We can drop it in the show notes here. And so that gave you kind of the mental map, like the framework of, hey, like I need somebody to make the pies, and somebody to you know, sweep up at the end of the night, and somebody to, you know, be at the register. And then you started to systematically, because you were very systems oriented. He is the Excel master of the universe, and you started to systematically build out SOPs for each part of the business. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's like if you've seen the movie The Founder with Michael Keaton, the scene where I think it's on a tennis court, and and he's on a ladder, and he's like, you know, wiping out the chalk lines. And I mean, granted, that's you know, they called it the speedy system, but their vision was to just optimize that one thing so they can, you know, roll it out into 40,000 locations or whatever. And I kind of viewed the real estate business like that. There's so much nonsense that an agent does on a regular basis that does not make them any money, and they think it does. And the traditional model will have you think that you need to do all the 12 jobs that a real estate agent's required to do. And 10 of the 12 jobs you can hire people to do for way less than $50 an hour.
Yeah, and as you were doing this, I think you started to get, like, obviously it worked smashingly successful for you. What were you doing at that time, like 400 units or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, not every year did we do. 5 years after I did 44 in my first full year, and then we did over 10 times the production with 10 agents, and I was out of production.
And you were completely out. And it was
totally
profitable.
Out. And it was, I took home 1.2 million that year.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And there were some very kind of prominent voices in the real estate industry that were like, nah, you're full of shit, man. There's no way you could do that, right?
Yeah, the year before, I won't say his name, but he's been coaching for 40 years, and he's got a son that has a big coaching company too.
Yeah.
I sent out for a webinar. The title of the webinar was How I Sold 312 Homes Working 1 Day a Week.
Yeah.
And this guy, who's the OG of coaching, you can figure out who it is, sent that email, took a screenshot of that email and sent it out to his entire list. And so people were emailing me like, and he said, if you believe this, I have land to sell you, like swampland to sell you in Florida or something.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that is such a, it's like the, what's that analogy? They said it today in our event where, you have one crab in a bucket and the crab will get out.
Yeah.
And you have multiple crabs in the bucket, they're going to pull the crab down.
That's what that is.
That's exactly what that is.
Yeah. And I'm aware it's also a lack of open-mindedness. Yeah. I got an email like that sent out about me too. So we're in the same camp.
It's awesome. And I was talking to that guy's son, like face to face with his son, and he said he couldn't get his dad to go golfing with him that weekend because he had a hefty event he had to do.
Yeah.
It's crazy if you think about it.
I think you can only duplicate what you are.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's interesting to know something's true. Kind of like we know, like EXP is like real. It's like a real thing. Rev share is a real thing. Equity is a real thing. Collaboration is a real thing. And for other people, it'll be like, nah, that's not real, right? So you're doing that, and then you figured like, okay, I can teach other people how to do this, right? Was that a natural thing? Was it a natural growth, or did people start to reach out to you and they were like, hey?
No, you still give me shit today about like not being on social media. Like I'm super introverted. Like give me a spreadsheet over like anything. I was telling Carla like I haven't been on Facebook in like I don't know how long. And that's the only platform I'm even on, which is not like
which is funny to me because you said Facebook first. That's kind of funny to me.
Right.
And what I told you today,
I go on Instagram and I get a headache.
Yeah.
Like everyone's better looking than them. And their kids are better behaved and they're traveling all the time. It's like, what am I? I'm a loser over here.
Yeah.
So, but I forget your question.
But you still managed to like somehow build a coaching business.
Yeah. So I think it was exactly where we started the conversation, where there's a good book, I think it's called The Second Mountain, where it's like you kind of figure out your first mountain is all the homes you sell and the
grinding, the pushing,
and all of that, and then the second mountain is helping others to do it, so leading others and impact. And
did you really feel like a calling to do that, or was it more like
I remember turning to Julie, my wife, and saying, do you think I can start a coaching company? And she, when I first married her, I had this like super cozy, multiple six-figure corporate job, and then we weren't married yet. Yeah, like I got into real estate just after.
Start all over.
And I went from like multiple six figures, super cozy, to I think I netted $37,000 my first 10 months in real estate. I spent money on everything. I sold a bunch of homes, but I just wasted a bunch of money. And I was like, man, I've got to figure this thing out. So no, it wasn't really natural. I mean, I think there's just this higher calling where I saw a lot of, even the big players in the industry that just they didn't have a quality of life. They weren't, it wasn't balanced, and they didn't really figure out the system side, and they were still heavy in the business. And a lot of, I watched some of them, just have major challenges. And I think that was the inspiration. I was also saved in 2009. So I got into real estate in 2007. I was saved in 2009, and that just kind of got me on this journey of just more serving. And when I first started my team, it was very selfish.
Was it?
So selfish, like not as harsh as I'm going to make this sound, but they were there to serve me.
Yeah.
So it was not the model of leadership that you would read in any book.
Yeah.
Because I was so triggered, and I was figuring out how to generate all this business and sell all these homes, and but it evolved over time, and I had some really tough endings of relationships and tough conversations, and that really put me in my place, and my faith was coming along. So with this whole model of just, not that I'm even in the same ballpark as Jesus, but just leading more like that, just a humble heart. And I'm not as humble as I could be. Julie reminds me of it all the time. She's like, yeah, he's working on his humility.
I think my wife would say the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm working on it though. It's so good.
Yeah.
So it was a natural evolution in conjunction with kind of faith, and also a desire to help other people, because you noticed and you looked around. So it's interesting. So at the beginning you said, like I didn't want to bring this to like my family. Like what you experienced as a young person. But then what happens is like, so once you did that for your family, now you start to look out and be like, well, I don't want like my neighbors to be dealing with this stuff. And that's like, real estate community. So it's like, all right, let's expand our level of awareness to them. And for the last, I don't know, decade, you've been teaching agents how to scale and systematize their real estate business so they can reclaim margin and have time and all that other stuff.
Yep. Yeah, without losing their life in the process.
Yeah. And then how did EXP, because you're like doing your thing. You're like a successful coach, you've sold all the real estate. Yeah. And then what caused you to be like, how is EXP tied into the through me thing?
I mean, you kind of mentioned it earlier. You said something like, how did you say it? You kind of make these decisions, the IDE.
Yeah.
Yeah, so killing off pieces, to kind of go in different directions. And EXP was a hard no.
Jose, we just want a cash offer. We do not want to list the property. We don't want anybody to walk through our home.
Yeah, happy to give you a cash offer. I have no problem whatsoever with that. You mind me asking, like, what you would like as a cash offer?
Yeah, I was thinking, like, I wanted to hear what you had to say about that.
So you're kind of thinking, like, hey, look, like, I want to hear what your offer is versus me tell you what I really want for the property.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'm happy to tell you what my cash offer is. You mind me asking what the condition of the property is?
Yeah, it's in pretty good condition. No like major issues. There's no roof issues or anything like that.
So no major issues. Got it. And is it like remodeled? Is it in original condition? What's the status of it?
No, it's kind of original, but we've kept it up real nice,
Okay, so original, kept it up real nice. Got it. Okay. And then I know that obviously you said that you'd like for me to make you a cash offer. Here's what I think would be a lot easier, Aaron. It's a lot easier if you just tell me what you want for the property. Then I can go back and do my research and see if that's an actual number that you would consider versus me just throwing out a random number. Can you at least tell me like a certain range that you're looking for to try to see if I could even make it work for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking like 600, somewhere around there.
Got it. Okay, so you're thinking like 600,000. So at this point now that you actually have a number, you'll actually be able to, and this is not scripted anymore, you'll be able to kind of determine, is that a retail number or is that like an actual cash offer number? So if the number that they throw out to you is a retail number, then I'm going to approach this as a real estate agent perspective, meaning I'm going to go to them and say, I'm going to begin to lead that conversation in that direction. Now, if they say 600 and that's actually like a cash offer number, then I'm going to lead to take it from a cash offer perspective. In other words, basically.
And let's say it was retail, like what would that conversation, like what's the bridge? Because I know bridges are very important. Like how do you get from one place to the next? So what's the bridge from once you hear they say 600 and like, oh, there's a model match that's sold retail for like $595 or $580. Yeah. It's like, okay, they want retail. So what's the bridge to get them from the cash to now we're going to set an appointment for selling at retail?
I would ask another question. I would say something along the lines, okay, got it. And just to confirm, like you're not looking to get the property on the open market. You're looking for more like of a private type of offer. At least that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the preference.
Got it. Now, what if you knew that the only way to get that 600,000, what if it was possible, but you knew that the only way to get that would be to get it on the open market, but there was a way where we can make it super easy for you, limited showings as is still. Is that something that you'd be open to?
Well, I mean, I guess so.
Got it. Can I make a recommendation?
Yes.
So here's what I recommend.
Yeah.
You close basically at that point, basically.
Yeah. So like based on what you've been kind enough to share with me, I'm hearing a couple things. The first is you definitely want to sell. It's not a question of if, it's just how you're going to go about doing so, whether it's, a cash offer or exploring on the open market and retail. The second thing I'm hearing from you is that the more information you can gather right now in terms of realistically what an investor would offer for a home like yours in this condition and what you could get on the open market and how quickly you can get it, the better equipped you'll be so you can decide which approach serves you best. So what I'd like to do is this, and I wouldn't mind, and then you go into, how we can connect. You can pop by, take a look, see what it has to offer, and go from there.
I also think so today's topic is how to get cash offers or how to make cash offers as a real estate agent. So I think as an industry, it's something that we're not used to. And I think that most agents, what they do when they hear that somebody wants a cash offer is they try to talk them out of the cash offer versus listening to what the consumer really wants. So when I hear a cash offer, I'm open to it. Like I've bought some properties that like are 70% of the value, and I actually make more money if they allow me to buy it for cash if the deal is right. But instead of my brain automatically going into a cash offer is bad, I think about what do they really want when they say cash offer. And what I hear when I say cash offer is sometimes people say that they want a cash offer, but what they really want is simplicity. What they really want is as is sale. So if you can make it simple for them, if you can make it an as is sale, they really don't care if it's a traditional listing or if it's a cash offer. In some cases they do, but in some cases they don't. What I realize a lot of times when people ask us for cash offers is that they think that they want a cash offer, but they really want a retail offer, meaning that the number that they're thinking in their head is so close to retail that what's going to end up happening is they're going to end up listing the property with a real estate agent versus selling it at 75 to 70% of whatever the home is worth. In some cases, it'll work out, but as an agent, you want to remain open-minded to both possibilities and then help them in whichever route they want to go in, basically.
I agree. Yeah. And it's interesting because I just read about this concept today, actually. It's called selective attention, that your eyes and will only see and your ears will only hear what you're looking for. So in other words, I'm aware that there was a point in your real estate career where if somebody said, I want a cash offer, that you wouldn't be open to it. You'd be like, well, we can get you more on the open market. And like, are you sure? Usually those people want to buy it, right? So what happened for you? I know, but this is for other people. What happened for you that caused your brain to start to be open to that possibility?
So what happened for me is before I became open to the possibility, I would attend just real estate top listing agent events, like how to become a dominant listing agent. So that's all my brain was focused on. I actually started attending flipper events and wholesaler events. And what I realized at these events is these people weren't any more skilled than I was as a real estate agent. They were actually a lot less skilled than I was. They were just really good at attracting motivated sellers. And what I realized with them is that a lot of them were making $100,000 on a flip, $50,000 on a flip, $100,000 on a wholesale. And sometimes it would take me 5 commission checks to get that. So what I started to realize is that I was missing out on business because I wasn't open to that possibility. And when I became open to it, I just started dancing between the two. Like, so if somebody told me, hey, I want a cash offer from the property, fantastic. Happy to give you a cash offer for the home. Can you tell me a little bit about the property? Can you tell me about the condition? Blah, blah, blah. Great. And then I would say something along the lines like, okay, and if I was able to get you a cash offer for the home, like as is condition, no commissions, no closing costs, what number would you actually sell the property for? And in some cases, they would say, well, I'll sell it for $866. And if that's a cash offer route, then I'm going in that direction. But if the number that they're telling me is a retail number, then I'm going to take it in the retail and I'm going to try to shift them from like, hey, look, you can actually get an as is sale. You can make it a very simple sale. You can still get the number that you want. But in order for us to do that, it's going to require that you put it on the open market. Would you be open to that? And then at that point, they're going to give you a couple of like objections like, no, I really don't want that. I only want as is, blah, blah, blah. But most of those people that want retail numbers are going to end up putting it on the open market with a real estate agent, basically.
Yeah. And I would propose that it's really the future of agents, because I think people that only do, let's say like sub 2 with Pace Morby, or only do like wholesaling and they don't understand the retail side, they're not as kind of well-rounded as, let's say, me or you, who understands the retail side at scale, who do hundreds of those transactions on a yearly basis. And then if you add this to your repertoire, like if you add this to your knowledge set of being open to, other options, then truthfully, they shouldn't have as much business as they do. The reason that they have so much business is because the vast majority of agents' minds are closed to creative finance, are closed to cash offers. And what's super interesting to me as well, Jose, we were talking about this before, is like all of these major platforms that get in the way get in front of consumers before we get in front of them, right? So if you think about like there's a race, and at the beginning of the race, a contract gets signed, and at the end of the race, there's a closing. But before the race begins, they're online on these platforms, right? And then when the race ends, they're back online on these platforms to find out information about real estate. So all of them recognize that their entry into the transaction is the internet. It's getting in front of consumers. But then what they're doing, if you pay attention, is they're offering different choices and options. They all have cash offer programs. Why do they do that? Because they know that statistically 5% of the time or less will someone accept the cash offer, because it's usually 25 to 30% below fair market value. But what they also know is those other 95 leads out of 100, they are now seller leads, and they can sell those to agents for 35, 40% rips, which is unbelievable. And the primary reason why that is because agents aren't willing to do it themselves, right? So you have various different third-party sources that, you know, allow people to raise their hand and say, hey, I want a cash offer. But because your mind's open, you can have conversations with them. If they fit the 5% criteria, you buy it. If they don't, you're like, okay, great. Well, it sounds like what you're really interested is retail. And the great news is I happen to be a licensed real estate agent, and we do a lot of business in your geographic area. I can help you with that. So with that being the case, may I make a suggestion? You know, based on what you've been kind of to share with me, I'm hearing a couple of things. The first is you want to sell it. The second is you want top dollar. So what I'd like to do, you know, I wouldn't mind, I'm in your area all the time. Pop by, take a look, see what it has to offer. While I'm there, I'll show you those two things. Number one, what top dollar is. Number two, what the net proceeds would be to you when it all shakes out. And number three, and this one's really important because sometimes people imagine that having an agent help will take a long time. I can show you how within 14 days we can have a contract, and within another 30 days we can be done and complete. And then at least this way you'll have everything you need and you can make the decision that you feel is best. Does that sound fair to you? Like it's actually pretty simple, but the barrier is mental. The barrier is like a way of thinking.
Well, even then, like part of your options or your value proposition to sellers can be like, look, like when we meet, I'll share with you like what we can offer you cash if you wanted to sell cash. And then I'll share with you, like, if you wanted to go on the open market, this is what you could expect to receive, and net bottom line, what it would all shake out. This way you have both options available. And then at that point, now the consumer has a cash offer that they can pull the trigger on. 95% of the time, it's not going to work out with the cash offer. And then they have the retail offer at the same time. Now, here's what I don't do. What I don't do is I leave it up to them to see which one of those options would be better for them versus trying to steer them in one way or another, meaning versus trying to steer them into the cash offer. The other thing that I was going to say is if you look at everything around us, like if you look at Zillow, Open Door, you look at Redfin, they all have the cash offer button now. And the reason they're doing it is to generate leads. So as a real estate agent, what I'm doing on a lot of the marketing that we're doing, I took the moving truck. I don't know if you know this, Aaron. The moving truck used to say, buy or sell with me, use this truck for free. Now it says, we buy houses cash. Big, yellow, bold letters. Why? Because if somebody's considering selling for cash, we want to be speaking to them, or it also generates traditional sellers. On our email list, whenever we send the podcast videos out to the client, we have a button on there now that says cash offer. Like, so we're giving people options, and the appointment that I'm going on today is actually from somebody who clicked on the cash offer button, and after speaking to him, he really wants retail. He doesn't want cash offer, but he's open to retail as long as we can make it a very simple process for him and make it an as-is sale, which there's no doubt in my mind that we can do that. Zero doubt in my mind that we can do that.
Well, and it's interesting because I was just on a coaching call yesterday with an agent in your state, works the high end, and he was sharing with me that there's actually less inventory.
In the high end?
Yeah, well, there's less inventory on January 26th of 2024 than there was on January 2nd of 2024. So inventory is going to be a problem. He was asking me, like, what do you think moving forward? I'm like, well, I think 2024 will be pretty similar in terms of transaction volume. So that's not going away. So he's like, well, what's the remedy? And one of the remedies that I suggested to him is having a cash offer program. It's the same way that these platforms generate leads. They're generating seller leads that they can sell back to agents for 35%. But you can do this for yourself. Now,
The barrier to this, and I want everybody to be clear, is you have to have a little bit of resources, right, to be able to pay for these leads. And in agents' minds, what they think is like, oh, it's okay for me to spend 35% on a lead, which could be $5,000, right? Because it's coming out of commissions. But when you think about it, that's an absurd amount to spend on a lead, like an unbelievable amount, where you could be spending $200 to $300 for that lead. And because you're taking on that risk, it's your cash offer program. Now you get the seller leads that come from that instead of these platforms, like a Zillow or whoever, getting those seller leads and then selling them back to you at 35% rips.
Yeah. So there's different lead providers. Like, for example, one of the ones that we've talked about is called Need to Sell Your House Fast, which Aaron will include an affiliate link down below. Basically, if you sign up through that link, it actually helps out this podcast. So it basically is a lead source where it's called pay per lead, basically. So you pay for the lead and then you get a motivated seller lead, meaning you get somebody looking to sell for cash. But what I have found with a lot of these leads is that most of them end up turning retail, and then one or two will end up turning into the cash offer. So as a real estate agent, it's really a way for you to lead generate for seller leads. And even then, like, I have a couple of students that are in Canada, and they're like, well, we don't have any access to any data. We don't have access to any, like, sellers' information or phone numbers. I'm like, well, if I was in Canada, I would start a website for making cash offers, and then I would advertise on PPC or find a company that does pay per lead. And then I would advertise that I'm a cash offer buyer, knowing that 95% of those people that inquire are not going to be able to sell to me for cash, because obviously for cash, there's a certain margin. And then for the other 95%, it leads to an opportunity for me to list it. So what I'm telling a lot of people that I'm talking to is, guys, we got to stop thinking like real estate agents.
What's going on, Hosey? Yo, bro, you're looking a little slims, bro. You've been fasting, and I didn't eat all that. I'm just saying you look like a little slimmy. You know what I mean?
Thank you, man. I appreciate the compliment. Hey, who do you think you are having me waiting for you? You know, like it's.
Hey,
don't you know who I am, bro? You're like 3 minutes already, man. Come on.
Yeah. It's all good. So, how you doing, bro? You doing all right?
Good. Yeah, good.
Yeah. It's out there selling homes, you know what I mean? Taking $9 million listings, you told me. Way to go, champion.
Yeah, that's the first 9 milli that I take. So this year we have a 5 million and a 5.5 coming up. So
good for you. Good for you. So today we are gathering to have a conversation about doing 100 deals in a calendar year. I've done that. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years in a row. You've had the good fortune of doing that. I think more than once. I
want to clarify. Personally, I've only gone probably to about like 80 homes a year. Yeah. Personally. With a team, I've gone to 110, and I think max was 120 basically. So we hover as a team anywhere from 100. So just a little quick clarification there for me.
Yeah. I've done more than 100, but like, it's all
you
good.
have. Yeah.
Yeah. Like who's counting?
I've only done 80. Only,
only. It's a light 80. Just like a light 80 million in volume, whatever it is. Yeah. So, we've both sold real estate in high volume, and what I'm aware of is like doing 100 deals for a lot of people is like this. It's like a holy grail. You know what I'm saying? If you could do 100 deals in a calendar year, it's like winning the Super Bowl. For being a real estate agent, and if you could do it consistently over an extended period of time, it's just demonstrated excellence, right? And what I'm also aware of is there has to be a system behind it. Mm-hmm. Wherever you see, results over an extended period of time, there's a system behind it. So, what could be helpful or useful is me and you just kind of going through in our minds, 4 or 5 things that if somebody wants to do 100 deals in a calendar year, what mental maps would they need? What kind of tactical
approaches would they need? What would be their main sources of business? Where should they be stacking time? What skills so they should be focusing on? Just really like a blueprint as far as what it would take.
100%. And I'm on board for that 100%. Now, keep in mind that the blueprint that we're going to give you is not, it's something that is duplicatable because you're basically taking the ideas of two people that have sold listings in high volumes, and we're giving you the mental map to do so. It's not like, hey, look, I have a TV show on TV and you can't duplicate it. Or it's not like, hey, I am a 13 out of 10 in terms of hotness, like that you can't duplicate.
Hey, bro, are you a 13 out of 10 in terms of hotness, bro?
No, but I'm just saying that there are some things that you can't duplicate, and sometimes you see like somebody who maybe like selling Sunset. Like I looked at their production before they had the TV show and looked at their production after they had the TV show. Production is completely different.
Sure. Yeah, and I remember being at a like speaking at a Hispanic Association of Realtors, and I spoke, so I like tear the house down, and then everybody afterwards like, yeah, like what Aaron said, right? And but this woman stood up, and she was on like Millionaire Real Estate Agent Miami, again 13 out of 10 like model, and she's like, well, you got to build a personal brand, and I'm in the back, I'm like, this fucking. I wanted to raise my hand and be like, excuse me, ma'am. It's like, yes. How many people in this room look like you? It's like 0. How many people will have the probability of getting on TV like you did? 0. So essentially what you're sharing with them like really won't help them that much, right?
Because it's very hard to duplicate. Now, if you have the opportunity to get on a TV show, by all means do it. If you are a 13 out of 10, by all means use that. We're not saying don't do it, Unfortunately, I didn't have the TV show, or I didn't go after the TV show. And unfortunately, I'm not a 13 out of 10. I'm probably a good 10 out of 10.
Dang, bro. Wow. Hey, it's getting spicy today, bro. Self-assessing at high levels, huh? So, and what we did.
Agree with that? Comment down below if you agree with that. And if you disagree, comment down below as well, too.
There you go. So, and what we both did is we both gravitated towards something that was actually like duplicatable, meaning that it was independent of physical appearance. It was independent of the amount of attention that we had on platforms, whether it was, television or media now, which we both are in that world. And we know that it's predictable, duplicatable. I also know that it can be taught, because when I first met you, weren't doing too many transactions. And after spending, some time together and really working on your craft, you started to list property in high volume, independent of those other two factors we mentioned. So I know that it is something that can be taught, and it's a skill. It just implies practice. So let's first begin with a mental map. As far as if you want to go down this path of having a goal of doing 100 transactions, which, by the way, you want to set goals based on the person that you will have to become in order to accomplish them. Because if you think like doing 100 deals is going to drastically change your life in some way, I promise you, nobody at Dunkin' Donuts is going to be like, oh my God, here's Jose. He did 100 deals this year. Like the guy you cut off is still going to flick you the bird. You know what I'm saying? Like not that much is going to change. What will change, though, is who you are as an individual. And that's actually really valuable, right? Because nobody can take that away from you. So if you want to set that goal, I think the first mental map that you have to get really clear on is that it's going to come from listings. And I know that that's like really
period,
difficult.
End of story.
Yeah, like period, end of story. And I know that that's really difficult for people to, accept or acknowledge. I just know that it's a fact. Is that if you're going to go from, 10, 15, 20 deals and go to 100, it's primarily going to come from listing property, like 80% of it, right? And in order to do 100 transactions, if you have a well-oiled machine in the sense that you have like administrative staff, like listing coordinators, transaction coordinators, and then you refine the skill of being able to, make outbound calls or knock on doors or things of that nature, and set appointments, pre-qualify those appointments, that sort of thing. You can just throw it over your shoulder and keep going. But the main mental map that people need to get clear on is that it's going to come from listings.
And just to piggyback on that, I did a presentation for EXP recently. And part of that presentation was I looked up the top 10 agents in our market who does the most units, and I looked up by who does the most volume. By who does the most volume, 10 out of 10 were primarily listing agents, meaning more than 50% of their business came from listings sold. On the unit side, 9 out of 10 were primarily listing agents, meaning more than 50% of their business came from listings sold. And not to brag, but I was the number one sellers agent in the entire Ventura County for the last 5 years in terms of units sold. And I was ahead by about 100 units. Let's not get into that. But 94%,
like it wasn't even close, essentially, is what you're saying, right?
But 94% of the business that I do is listing sold. And the reason is that it's a lot easier to manage 10 listings than it is to manage 10 buyers.
100%. And it's much more effective and efficient. It's more leveraged. So if the goal and objective, the first mental map that you got to get clear on is that if you want to set a goal of doing 100 transactions in a calendar year, you have to be heavy on listings. Like there's no way
if and buts
about it, right? And success leaves clues. So when Jose pulled those numbers, he could see, yeah, those that do the most volume have the most listings, right? There's a reason why 80% of agents, I'd say 70 to 80% are very buyer heavy. The reason is because there's not that much rejection, and truthfully, it's not that skilled of an activity. Requires much more skill, requires much more of a, kind of competitive, aggressive in a way, kind of disposition to play in the arena of listings, right? Where, you may be competing with 3, 4, 5 other people versus just like, hey, you want me to open up the door? Like there's not that much resistance there, right? So that's the first mental map. The second thing that I think is critical is that there's two groups of people. If you want to get to 100 transactions, okay, there's two groups of people. There's people that you know and people that you don't know. The question is which one's bigger? It's the ones that I don't. So I want you to really hear, I'm not saying not to work with past client centers of influence. What I am saying is if you want to get to 100, you have to get very, very good at speaking to the group that you don't know. And that comes with nauseating, disgusting amounts of role play and practice, right? When I first met Jose, he went on like 100 appointments and took like 20 listings or something crazy like that. Like it was a very small number. And it's because he was working with buyers previously. He didn't have the skill set of being able to work with sellers in high volume, didn't know what to say, how to say it, didn't know how to close, didn't know how to do those things. We spent a lot of time together. And then he went from doing that, having to go on appointments twice to get listings, only having a 25% closing ratio to having like an 80 to 90% closing ratio. And his amount of listing inventory jumped dramatically from listing 20 homes in a year to like 50 to like 70.
Yeah. So I think what you're referring to is just looking at this as a skill set and being like, okay, so when I started off as an agent, I didn't have the skill set of becoming a top listing agent. Now, like, let's say I'm learning social media, it's a skill set that you have to learn. So the good news is it's not something that I possessed, but it's a skill that you can learn. It was funny because I was listening to a podcast today and the guy said that Michael Jordan was so fanatical about practicing that he would rather miss a game than to miss practice.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's unbelievable. It talked about like a Kanye West too. One of his first albums, College Dropout, on one of his songs, he says like, spend 3 summers locked in a room, like basically producing 5 beats a day or something like that. So meaning like practicing. And this idea of like that the skills are a skill set and that you could actually learn this skill set to be more efficient is actually something that can help you. I have an agent right now that she's making the phone calls, but I could just see the conversations that she's having. And it's almost like she's losing money, not losing money, but the business is just kind of like going through her fingertips because she has no idea what to say and how to say it because she's not practicing, basically.
Yeah, agreed. So two separate things. One, you'll notice that when Jose first started in the business, just like me, he was being told all these different things. He didn't have the mental map of it's going to come from listings. Then, once he realized it was going to come from listings, he needed to obtain the specialized knowledge on how to take listings in high volume, which includes how to prospect, which includes what to say and how to say it to set appointments, which includes how to pre-qualify those appointments, which includes going and presenting, which includes handling objections and closing, right? And then, if need be, getting a price adjustment. All of those are skilled conversations that take an extended period of time to really get good at. Now, if you want to speed it up, you just put more time and energy effort in, right? So I role play twice a day, 6 days a week for 3 years. That will speed up the learning curve. You see, it's easier to start things. It's very difficult to finish them. Most people are really good at starting things, and they get really excited. They have what you could call like uninformed optimism. They see somebody like Jose or me doing all these deals and like, oh man, this is fantastic. People making all this money. Like, this is great. Then they get in it and they start to do it. And then they end up with informed pessimism, which is, oh, this is a lot harder than I thought it was. Jose makes it look easy. Aaron makes it look easy. This is a lot harder than I thought it was. And then they end up in what would call like the valley of despair, which is like, I don't know, maybe this isn't for me. And then you know what most people do there? They find something else to get excited about. What are we doing? Where are we going? Nice to see you. And why are we going there? Now, these are questions that me and my wife, Carla, have been asking each other for the last 20 years. And at first, the answer